All right. For Good Thinking Podcast 56, really, really excited to chat about brands misbehaving, basement sushi, and retail coup.
And I get all in on Petit Bateau and how I'm hoping that that's going to change things, and how Kirsten and I might be booking a trip on a bougie barge. So with the Belmont.
It's coming.
It's a fun episode. Enjoy.
Welcome back. Good Thinking Podcast 56.
56. I mean, we're getting old now. It's marketing
happening.
podcast about culture, trends, and all the things I'm sharing on Substack is getting old.
I know. We're your host. I'm Kirsten. This is Chris. Here we go.
Let's do it.
Okay, so we're going to be succinct in this one. We have meetings back to back, so we're going to make some things happen. I do want to give a couple shout outs. You passed your driving test in Italy, which is a huge fucking deal. So yes.
Yay. 20 years of driving, but I had to take a test again.
Here we go.
Welcome to Italian bureaucracy.
Also, some upcoming travel in San Francisco, LA, and New York. So reach out if you're around those places, want to meet up. Lots of fun things
Mid-March
happening.
And early April.
All right, getting into it. Culture. There's so much to talk about. We've already started jabbering on LinkedIn about a lot of these things, and there's a lot of conversations. But again, we're going to keep it straightforward. But got to talk about you up and brands misbehaving. Obviously, I'm so here for this and already started talking about it.
Yes, and you shared this one with me, so there's no surprise there. Yeah, I think it's interesting. So what you up is she's talking about, is what Kirsten's talking about, is that IKEA did this great campaign recently promoting a mattress, but they don't tell you that, and they started texting people between 10 p.m. and 5 a.m. They were just DMing people on Instagram and just writing you up. And if you replied like, yes, why is IKEA messaging me? Then they'd say, hey, here's 15% off a mattress. Very funny, cheeky. And it speaks to kind of, for me, this bigger thing that's happening that Fred Hart talked about when we were doing our 2025 predictions, which is brands misbehaving. And I've given countless examples since he mentioned this. It's like, I can't unsee it. It's everywhere. Dr. Squatch?
Yep.
Yeah, talking about ayahuasca.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
We have golf brands that are, looking like cigarette brands. There's just a dozen examples of all of this. And I think the global thing that I'm seeing is just people want brands to feel like humans, and we like humans who are not well behaved. Mostly.
Exactly. And I think exactly. And the point of it is it's another way to cut through that feels fresh, that feels new, that feels a little bit fun. And 100% here for it. And you mentioned Mercedes makeout sessions, which we talked about last week, and then Duncan's innuendos. Just so good.
So again, I'm tying all the newsletters all the time. So if you are a listener here and anything that you're not like familiar with, every single thing that we mention is something that we've mentioned in 1,000 Substacks. So go back into the Substacks and you'll find, just search brands misbehaving in the Substack and you'll find a lot.
And it's in there, yeah. But I also want to hear in comments of what people are thinking about this whole thing happening. Super curious.
Yeah, and if you're a brand misbehaving, please drop in the comments and misbehave.
Yeah, indeed. All right, basement sushi. This is for sure on the travel list. And I think it's fascinating what's happening. If you want to give a little bit of an overview, and it's happening without logos, to the best of my knowledge.
More travel. Second week of June, I will be in Paris if anyone's there and wants to hang out and go get basement sushi. But yeah, so Saint Laurent opened a sushi restaurant. It's actually a sushi park specifically. So sushi park, if you're not familiar with LA, is basically this like not super flashy on the outside sushi restaurant that's just well known among celebrities and everyone in LA who loves sushi, and sushi in LA, let me tell you, is extremely good. So the quality is high. And what I heard was that, the Saint Laurent team like loves to go there and essentially was like, hey, can you come and open a location? But what I love about this is there are so many, and I wrote this in the top of the segment is like, if you are you really a luxury brand if you don't have a restaurant concept right now? Louis Vuitton's opened a restaurant in New York. We should go together when we're there, and have some branded ravioli.
Yes.
There's obviously Gucci is famous for this and has many restaurants in Milan, but is also starting to open them worldwide. There's Armani has restaurants, especially in Asia, opening. So it's just kind of, these are the beautiful, like very branded, like the brand plates, the branded food. Like it's just brand upon brand upon brand. I mean, it's like, it's so layered in brand. And then you see this Saint Laurent version of this, and there's literally not a logo. It's so subdued. It's so quiet luxury, right? And I think quiet luxury is on the way out, but not when it comes to great restaurants, obviously. And what I love about this is that if you think about what works for a brand, about a brand like this, it's not this like ostentatious logo dump, right? Like that's not why you come back. I mean, maybe with, you know, Louis Vuitton bags, like that is why you're coming back for it. But for the most part, like Saint Laurent, like you're not coming back for this like big logo play every single time. And so it works really well for the brand. It feels really beautiful. And I think it actually, if we want to, you know, quietly skip down to fun for the week, there's a restaurant bar thing that I wrote about at the bottom called Quarters. I thought it was Cartier, Cartier, but it's Quarters, and that was my European brain, like misspelling. But Quarters is this this new bar in New York that everything in this bar is shoppable. To the plates, to the glasses, to the furniture you're going to sit on. This is on my list of places. So I'm thinking of planning a good thinking excursion on the Thursday that we're there on the 4th. And this is one of the places that I would like to go and see personally. I like to take people to places that I haven't necessarily experienced before. And to me, this is a really interesting concept. Like obviously shoppable spaces is not very new, but this feels new in that it's not just a showroom that's shoppable, or like it's a real functioning bar. This to me is sort of representative of the future of experiential. You know, like when you go to, like maybe Saint Laurent has a line of plates and they have it at that place, but it's not necessarily something that it's like, hey, I have to have the logo on it in order for you to want and desire that plate. Like you can just pick it and say, hey, like as I'm leaving, like ship 8 of those to my house.
Yeah, I mean, it's not a new concept to your point. I think it was Crosby Street that I feel like was the first one. I think that was the name of it, which was an apartment.
So many of them
yeah,
in LA.
Or the apartment, maybe it was the apartment. Yeah, which are rad, but I think actually to go to a bar kind of takes it to a new level because if the glasses are good, you're always like, oh, can I take this home with me? Like ashtrays, things like that. So I think it's like rad to take it in such an experiential level. Yeah. Exactly.
Rays that we went to in New York, where we kind of concepted this podcast actually over many, many cocktails at Rays. And I was taking Kirsten to Rays in New York, and I'll post it in the show notes. But Rays is an experience, right? And it's a bar, but like you can also you can get tattoos when you're there. You can buy things when you're there. Like it's like, and it feels like a brand, and it's cool. Or it was cool for me. So yeah. I think there's a lot more to be done with this space. I don't think it's dead.
Right. And I think a great example of where it's going. Okay. Drugs and booze. Mio Marg National Margarita Day, which I'm clearly a fan of.
So this is talking about, so Chili's came out with a Lifetime movie. It's only 15 minutes, so not a full Lifetime movie. But it's a Lifetime show with Taye Diggs and Maria Menounos. I'm
Menounos, yeah,
names, guys. And it's about like, I mean, it's exactly like she does the cheese pool. They fall in love. It's National Margarita Day. It's, you know, like it's all the thing. Very funny concept. I liked it. It didn't get a lot of play from what I could tell beyond. One thing I will say is that the two cast members that they chose did share it, which has oddly not always worked into everyone's contract, which always makes me marvel. But the shares on their accounts, they did really well. And like, well, for sometimes I think when influencers or celebrities post things that are not like necessarily their type of content, it doesn't do well. But because this is their type of content, it played really well with their audiences. They haven't seen it a lot of other places. I just think that it should have been broken into a lifetime series that played out over TikTok, because that feels like slightly more relevant than a 15-minute lifetime. Like, it's a yes and.
Yes,
it just
I
wasn't
agree.
a yes and.
I agree. I'd say yes, and also coming off of Brands Misbehaving, it's National Margarita Day, and then moving into kind of a Lifetime movie feels a little bit like pulling back versus pushing forward. I think it could have been a little bit cheekier, but for sure, break it up, do it a little more modern and in all the places.
Uh-huh.
Okay, silvers, alphas, and Zs. A lot to talk about in here, but let's hit on family fun and talk about Michael Abata, who is kind of always on point.
Love Michael. Follow him on LinkedIn. That's,
Yes.
I think, his main channel, and he writes a lot about retail. And if you're in that space, he's a must follow. So I saw this post that he wrote about where he talked about Netflix opening. So Netflix, I've posted about this before. Netflix has this concept called Netflix Bites, which is essentially something that they've been testing with pop-ups, but this is the first time that they have a full, like, permanent location for it. And obviously it's in Vegas for the look and feel of it and just the vibe. But it's essentially all of these different experiences from the show. So you can get like Squid Games noodles, and they even have like a DIY cake where you get a sheet cake and it comes with all the toppings and you can make it yourself for one of their like food podcasts, food shows. I think it's a fun and interesting concept. What I was most interested in is the fact that, to me, this is indicative of a thing that I think that not enough brands take advantage of, which is that parents are desperate for something to do. I've talked about how there could be movie theaters and things like that, but here in the MoMA example that I gave, MoMA is starting a family festival, which obviously the Tate Modern in London has been doing for quite a while, but goes to show that I think, look at the turnout, tends to do well with its turnout, but I think the turnout is really, really good. And I think it develops these lifelong fans of the brand, obviously kids, but also parents become reliant on you as a brand to offer this. And so they're constantly looking at you for opportunities, which I think, again, is, another way to continuously engage somebody. Like, parents are always, every weekend, it's like you wake up with the same problem. What are we doing this weekend? Like, it's the same problem. It's like, what are we eating tonight? It's the same problem every weekend. It's not going away. It's never going away. So it's a permanent problem that you can permanently solve for somebody. And I think one thing that's really interesting is, obviously, we all know Vegas for Vegas, but Vegas is actually a super family, like, it's well-traveled in the family arena. And I think this carves out a niche for Netflix to support that group of people and becomes a destination that just like kind of Museum of Ice Cream became a destination. And there's this permanent slime museum. And I went to a museum in Barcelona recently. There was a bubble museum and they last there forever. And this becomes one of those, but your brand is tied to it.
Right. And I think that's the play. And I think, as we've seen, kind of you just being in Europe and having that lens, that those types of opportunities and environments are so much more in Europe. And so, but it's like parents everywhere. And we all know we need those. We went to IKEA a few weekends ago, and now my kids want to go back this weekend and they want to go for the food. Like, there's an opportunity to push that even more. I mean, I remember when my kids were young, we were in Brooklyn, and it was winter, let's go to IKEA, guys, because they can just screw around and that's a couple of hours there's such opportunity to take a brand and really, I think, push it to the
And you
next
come
level.
out with a couch. I mean,
100%. Yeah. It's like amplified target. Indeed. Retail. So much to talk about in here, but I feel like the really unique thing that I want to talk about is the Nike Skims, kind of the Kim coup. Because I think it's so different that it's not just a collaboration, it's a brand.
Yes, and that's why I think it's a coup. Because to be honest, like we all know that Kim has for a long time been sort of this person that everyone loves to hate. You know, like they're like, oh, she's this, she's that. And now she's gone and proved that no, she's actually Michael Jordan to Nike. So that's amazing. So essentially Nike has partnered with Skims, but they haven't just partnered on a collaboration where they're just doing a line of Skims. This is going to be a brand akin. It's set up exactly the way that Jordan brand is, in the sense that it has its own team and its own like thing that's going on. And I'd say, you know, I've been watching the sort of the traction it's been getting online and the, you know, what people are saying about it. And obviously there are some people who are like, oh, like, you know, no, Nike, da, 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 da. But for the most part, it's been extremely positive. And I would say that that is a testament to the brand that Kim Kardashian has built, not Nike. Like the excitement is happening because Skims is coming to Nike, not because Nike came to Skims, right? In my opinion. And I think that's like, you know, to me, Kim is the Martha Stewart kind of equivalent of our my generation, in the sense that everybody has always loved to hate her, but she has had her finger on the pulse of something kind of always. And I think this is just yet another example of her doing that. She can see that women's sport, like, and Nike doesn't really have the chops for it. And she can put her face and her brand and tie herself to the success of when that happens. And when it does happen, I think it will be bigger for her than it is for them.
For sure. For sure. And I think, you know, a Nike collab with any brand is kind of like, duh, of course that would be helpful. But I think what's so interesting, and I agree with you, I think it's a great call out that she's kind of the Martha Stewart of your generation. But it's the tension between that, right? It's like to have it happen right now with all of the things going on. And they, you know, did a collaboration with this brand. What do they do? North Face and like other brands trying to do it. It's the tension of coming in right now where, you know, Nike's might be losing some ground to some other retailers that are around there. Women's sports is definitely up, and it just pushes it with attention, which I'm impressed that Nike kind of bid at that and is really going for that. And I think that's what makes it really interesting for me.
Yeah, I agree.
All right, moving on to tech. Lots of things that I need unpacked for me, but only time for one. So the dusty apple.
Yes. Okay. I knew that this one, the way I wrote it, it's very hard, guys. I will apologize that sometimes I'm like, you're just going to have to read between the lines or read the articles in order to get this, because I only have so many lines allotted to me in the Substack.
Or you get somebody
to
explain it to us.
Yes. So, or you come here and I'll explain it to you afterwards. So essentially what this post in the information, like, and sometimes like, I love the information. I read it a lot and I post about it a lot in the Substack, but like sometimes they come out with the real gem. And this was basically like saying, I won't even read the exact line, but it was actually saying, you know, like, I counted Microsoft out for ages, right? Can you remember like when it was like, if you were said Apple to Microsoft, you would have been like, which one's the dinosaur? Right? Like, and there would have been no question which one you thought was the dinosaur. Right?
100%.
But Microsoft attaching itself to OpenAI, so in such a savvy way, in such an early kind of way, and they have completely changed kind of the trajectory of their business and realigned with basically becoming like Microsoft before Microsoft became Dusty. Back in, you know, like way before, was a pioneer of technology, right? And it has regained that place where it is now sort of the cusping, like, pusher of technology to me. Like, it is the one who's out on the forefront, who's saying, like, we're going to push money behind technology and AI. And then Apple is coming out with a new iPhone that is a dumber iPhone. Like, it's not as good as the one it's coming out with on purpose. Like, it's kind of a cheaper version of it. And the main feature that they're talking about in their kind of promotion of it is that they have their own modem, like cellular modem thing. But meanwhile, there's like a very good maker of this. And sure, you could argue that they're making their own technology and there is the advantage to that. And like, for sure, that is true. And especially right now with all of the stuff going on with the tariffs and everything. But it was just like the line of like, okay, Microsoft is out here on the forefront of like everything that we're talking about in technology, and Microsoft and Apple's over here being like, let's make it like our own modem. And you can sort of see the difference. And I think that more importantly, it's got nothing to do with like this technology or that technology. It has to do with public perception, right? Apple has always felt like it was just in the forefront. Like, it was just like, hey, like, we're going to put 1,000 songs in your pocket and we're going to make the first iPhone. And they always felt like they had their finger on the pulse of what we so deeply want, but haven't been able to articulate. And then Microsoft is kind of figuring that out right now with AI, and it's like doing all of this stuff where it's like people are finally like, oh my God, like, this is amazing. And Apple hasn't done anything very much for a really long time. And I think the public perception around a brand becoming dusty is dangerous because it
super dangerous.
It can seep into the bones of the brand in a way that is hard to come back from. Like, the fact that Microsoft came back only happened because we counted them out. Like, we were so done with them, we weren't even paying attention to them. They were equivalent of a Yahoo. And we were like not paying attention to them so they could work in the corner and like come up with whatever they wanted to do. Anything that they would have done would have been better. But the fact that they like took a bet and they bet big, right? But Apple seems to be afraid to bet big. And while I gave them big kudos on I think what they're doing at the marketing team, Severance, is really fun. Those are two very different businesses.
Very, yeah. I mean, I would say, I think it's an innovation problem from Apple. I think, the very beginning, they were innovative. And even as they came out with new iPhones, there was innovation behind them. And now it's just the next iteration. And I think what's interesting is, go ahead. Like, it's been an innovation problem for a while. Steve Jobs said there would never be a pencil, and then there was a pencil. Like, we haven't seen something from Apple that's been like, holy fuck, did you get that blah, blah, blah. They are tinkering and it's a better version, but that's different than innovation. And I think what's interesting that's maybe happening with tech now is it's kind of, because of AI, it's like what's inside versus what's kind of the outside flashy element. And so Microsoft is really able to kind of get ahead knowing that.
Yeah, and what we've seen from the outside of AI with like the humane pen that just went to the toilet this past 2 weeks, like, hasn't been all that great. Those were ex-Apple people. And they raised tons and tons of money, and then Humane came out with the AI pen and it was just like dead in the water. I think what it also is, though, and something that we talk about, we talk a lot about with our friend Ryan, is and you can explain who Ryan is for me, but because you do such a good job of introing people.
Courage podcast. He's amazing.
Yeah. Is fear. They are operating from a place of fear. Like, Apple is afraid of being whatever they don't want to be. Like, I can't speak for their fear for them, but my perception of it is that they are afraid of losing their cool, their touch, their whatever. And therefore they're not making anything. Like, and Microsoft was basically like, we have nothing to lose. And look where we are. So I think that's just also a culture problem. Like, it's, when your culture is toxic from the inside, your culture on the outside, consumers can feel it. And they have an inside culture problem, would be my guess.
100%. I think we're saying the same thing. I mean, I wrote an article on it, and I think it is about innovation is like, are you setting up an environment and creating a place where people can think and share ideas and push and not be afraid of that? And I absolutely agree with you. I think it's a place of fear of like, don't fuck up. You're going to live up to this. Don't make any mistakes. Don't do this. And you're constantly, we've all been in those places or those environments or those workspaces. You're constantly afraid. You're definitely not putting forward your best work. All right. Sport. Adidas. A lot to talk about in sport as usual, but I want to talk about them because all of the shoes that my daughter and her friends are wearing are Adidas. It's having a moment.
Yes. But I put them, I often toy between like, where do I put something? Because it's like Adidas, we could put it in retail. There's a lot of that. But I put them under sport because to me, this was like a really interesting campaign. So they are, they have done all the away kits for this Women's Euros 2025, right? But what I thought was really interesting, and the kits are cool. Like they have stories behind all the designs, and like if you get into that and like go down that rabbit hole, that's a fun one too. But what I thought was really interesting was the styling of this campaign, because they could have just put it on a bunch of soccer players and like and these are athletes, but like probably some of them are models and some of them are athletes. But like it's more the styling of it, right? Like to me, who they're trying to appeal to is not necessarily saying, hey, other athletes, do you want to wear our kits? They're saying, hey, fans, female fans, mostly, would you like to wear these clothes? And styling them in a way that you're like, well, I want to be her and I want to be her and I want to style like this and I want to like wear that outfit. And like all of them look rad. Like I'm here for like half of these outfits. Like I don't dress like this, but I want to dress like this, and I think it's very telling that I think it speaks to the fact that Adidas is looking at what is happening right now with female fans and saying, hey, let's not count out this gigantic, not just because it's women's like soccer tournament, right? Like I think that's not so interesting, but it's how they're speaking and saying, hey, like actually jerseys are things that women want to wear. They want to wear them in a cool and relevant way. And female fans can like express themselves and do cool things. And I've talked about like Off Season as another fan wear brand that I've mentioned before, which is also by the co-founder of Skims. So there's a lot happening in this space. And I think that brands are finally waking up, and it just made me think, hey, Adidas has tuned in.
I think you're absolutely right. And I think that's the difference, is they've really tuned in. It could have been some big like, oh, it's a really beautiful campaign, and it wouldn't have been as connected. But I think to your point, the styling and really bring out those different personalities, because there's a different vibe throughout. It's not like the exact same type of person. It's a bunch of different personalities and styled in a different way, different moods, different models, that I think really brings that about. And it does feel like they took a minute and really, to your point, tuned into that versus just kind of blew out this big campaign to really support the away kits.
Agreed.
Wellness and beauty. Plant amnesia. Yes, for Dave. I mean, a lot to chat about, but plant amnesia, I couldn't say no.
Yeah. I put this in here actually based off of the last conversation that we were having last week about B Corp and brands kind of stepping up and saying like, hey, this is what matters to us, right? And what I thought was interesting is, Diptyque has started this new foundation, and the foundation is supporting that they want to end our plant amnesia. And they are doing so by supporting these like famous gardens all over Europe. So for supporting kind of these historical gardens. So there's some in France and there's one in Rome, and the initiative will kind of grow. But I think it's interesting to me is like, you could think of it as like a CSR program, right? Like it does have kind of some of those trappings, but it's doing it in a much more interesting way to me, like where it's saying, hey, like these are some of our values. And I think the content is also something that people are interested in. It doesn't feel like, like their audience is probably interested in plants, is interested in these like beautiful gardens, and they're going to have this relationship and to be tied to this permanently versus like, hey, we're doing this thing and like, like not to not support kids in Africa, because actually like right now that probably is a really valuable thing for brands to do because all that money is going away. But I think it's just an interesting time seeing brands kind of put their money where their values are and seeing brands do that in an interesting way. And so I'm trying to be conscious of kind of sharing some of that when I see it.
Yeah, I think it's I just think it's really beautiful, and I agree with you. It's exactly putting their values there, and it's just sharing something that they thought would be beautiful and were interested in, and are obviously doing an amazing campaign with. And it's nice to see something where they're just like, I hope you like it too. And I mean, clearly it's beautiful and I think resonating. So I do love that.
And I'm sure they're getting some tax write-up for it. Like, and then there's all the like things that happen with brands, but I think it's just doing it in a way that feels relevant to your audience and unexpected and interesting and aligned with your product and, like fully integrated into the brand.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. Travel. Bougie babies.
Yes. So Instagram knows me, which it's not always best known for, but it does really know me, and fed me these bougie barges by Belmont that they're calling Les Bateaux Belmont in Burgundy. And these are essentially like floating barges that are like, I would call them like chalets, but like barges. So they're private, like a private barge that gets floated down the river for you. With a chef, with a this, with a that, with a, it's just like, sign me up.
Man.
But because I think, river cruises have been a thing for a while, and, they're cool, but they feel kind of antiquated. But this feels like, like Belmont is very, very good at this stuff. Like they were really the pioneers of the trains that everybody's talking about now and like bringing that in. And they are extremely good at doing these kind of very unique, hospitality concepts. And I love that. And then in the same week, I was served a capsule hotel concept in New York called Now Now that is these like kind of, like capsule hotels in Japan. I've stayed in some of the really nice ones at the airport, but also other places and in some vintage ones, which if you want to hear a story on, let me know and I'll tell you that story. But these are like mini rooms in New York, and they're called capsule hotels. So they're essentially like these tiny individual sleeper rooms, like $150 a night. But they look kind of like the Ace, but just tiny. And it feels cool and interesting and elevated way of doing essentially like a hostel concept. That doesn't feel hostily. Like I could imagine if you want to go and you're going on business and you feel like, you're, a freelancer and you're not quite like want to spend the money of an Ace or a standard hotel or, the Nomad or wherever. This feels nice.
Yeah. They're beautiful. Beautiful. I love it, but I'm into the barge. Tell me when you're going. I'll meet you there.
Yeah, the booking list is probably, there's only 5 of them, so the wait list is probably insane.
All we need is one. Okay. Got about 5 more minutes. Quick shout out to jobs, something new that we wanted to try from Kiva. Putting it out there, kind of curated opportunities. See what people think. I
saw some clicks. So, if you're looking for a job and you especially happen to be interested in Long Beach or LA, and it's these 2 jobs in particular are fashion brands, like purpose driven, like they sound interesting. So give them a look.
Yeah. And let us know. All right. Fun for the week. So I love, love, love the stamp idea.
I mean, how delightful. So to describe, because this is hard to describe, but essentially, and of course it's in Japan, Or maybe this one is in Korea. I can't remember. Or maybe it's this concept I've seen before, but it's essentially like, there you go. But like, if you're not watching the video, essentially you go around, you have this postcard, and there's these little stations. And so when you slot the card in, it always puts it in the right registration, right? So then you come on and you push your stamp onto it. And as you're going to these different like areas, you're essentially layering these stamps. So there's like a yellow stamp for the floor and for these flowers. And then you like layer on the plant and you layer on this. And essentially you create this piece of art. And my vision for it was like, how rad would this be as like a pop-up? When every single pop-up that I go to, brands always want to ensure that you have gone and like checked off every box, right? Like you've gone to see the product demo thing, you've gone to like do this demo thing, you've gone to like experience this, like you've done the photo op or whatever. And this is just a fun way to kind of gamify that versus like shuffling people along and like bothering them.
Totally.
And it's rewarding and delightful and all the things. So loved it.
Yeah.
Very
It is
important.
delightful. It is delightful. Miu Miu and Petit Bateau, and I bring this up specifically as I know you've been talking about Petit Bateau for a minute. So I think it's fascinating that this is happening.
Yeah. Let's pull it up on so one thing that is interesting to me about this is that it is widely known that the fashion girlies love buying children's clothes at Petit Bateau, like these white t-shirts. Like it is a common thing that you'll read all these things and it's like, yeah, like I always buy my shirts like in the kids section at Petit Bateau because they have really great like products and the fit is great and the quality is great. And I love Petit Bateau. Like I love their products. They always have really cute stuff. They are permanently on sale. It drives me absolutely bananas. Like everything that is going wrong with retail is going wrong at Petit Bateau, in my opinion. So I am hopeful that this collaboration is a sign that they are taking themselves for who they should be, because I think they are a really great brand, and that this collaboration is a sign that they are taking their worth seriously, and that we're going to not see a permanent sale. Like we're not going to be in a sales cycle anymore, and that, we're going to see a great rise again.
I love it. I'm here for it. The last thing I was going to share, we already talked about at the top, which is Quarter, or Courtier, as I would have said, but I'm going to say Quarter, which for sure we're going to check out when we're in New York.
Yeah. We're going to be in New York April 2nd for Brands and Culture, giving a 10 trends in 20 minutes talk. And I'm planning, heard it here first, probably in April for Good Thinking excursion. We may do a redux of it on the Saturday if there's enough interest. So like a Thursday version for the workers and the mamas and the papas. And then, more rowdy version of it on a Saturday if you want to. So we'll see. Let us know in the comments if you want to see that, or let me know in Substack if you're interested. And we'll signing you up, but we're going to take you to all the places that I've been following that I'm excited about across all the categories that we talk about every single week.
Yeah, I can't wait for it. I'm here for it. And be sure to like, share, do all the things the algorithm likes on the podcast. We appreciate it.
Yes, we really do.
Till next time.
Ciao.